Good evening, and thank you for joining me this evening at All About Us Radio, where we're changing you, changing us, and changing the world. This evening, I have a guest speaker who's going to help us empower women as well as our community and men on wealth and health. So, tonight, I would like to introduce Mr. Joe Scott.
Hey, how
Good
you
evening,
doing?
Joe, and thank you for joining us this evening.
No
I'm
problem.
very
Thank you
good,
for
thank
having
you.
me.
Oh, it's my pleasure, my pleasure. So, Joseph Scott has been in the financial sector since 2005. He began as a mortgage broker, transitioned into retail banking with JP Morgan Chase, and then went to HSBC, and lastly, Allstate Insurance. But then Joe stepped out on his own and stepped out on a leap of faith and has his own company where it incorporates finance and insurance. And it's called Rise Up Financial Agency. I have met Mr. Scott. It's been about, what, 15 years now?
Yes.
And what I could say is I can see such a tremendous growth, and he's done a lot for me as well. You know, his latest venture has taken off, and I'm so proud to have him as a guest speaker tonight. So, one of the things Joe believes in is the power of financial planning and its ability to uplift families. And that is one of the most important things that we want to talk about here tonight. So, yet again, Joe, thank you again for joining me and in ways that we can help change not only us, but the world and make our families and our community a healthier and wealthier community.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
having me. It's such an honor to be here. As I said, I've known Dr. Jones honestly since I began in retail banking because she was one of my clients at the time with Washington Mutual, which became JP Morgan Chase. And we just kind of developed a friendship since then. And, it's never waned. So it's an honor to have you to bring me onto your platform. I don't take it lightly. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. So, my program talks about keeping health and being healthy, but sometimes people don't realize that wealth and can play a factor. And I'm
Hmm.
not talking about the riches of wealth. I'm talking about how do we get to that platform to be to use our growth within finance to maintain a healthy well-being.
Okay.
So I want to ask you, what do you see as a correlation between health and how it affects wealth?
Um, well, of course, your health is is number one. And I can tell you that as I grow, like my focus has always been on the wealth side of it. I'm definitely learning the health side of it even more and how it correlates. Um, a healthy body can lead to healthy anything, right? So as far as your wealth, though, when you have your finances in order, right? That's one super stressor that's taken off the table, right? And wealth isn't defined by necessarily being rich. It's defined by how you manage your money. Because you can make a lot of money, but if you're spending just as much or you're spending more than what you make, then you're not wealthy at all. You're just a high income earner,
Hmm.
which is what we see a lot of people become. They make a lot of money, like celebrities. I'll use that as an example. Celebrities generally make a lot of money, but they don't necessarily manage it well. So that can definitely lead to quite a bit of stress, regardless of your income level.
So that's interesting. I always remembered my mom, and my mom was not rich at all. Back in the day, they used to call it nurses' aides. Now they call it, you know, patient PCAs, patient. You know, they help the sick and the elderly. So my mom was not somebody who came from wealth, and neither I. So I always remembered my mom telling me a statement of always pay yourself first,
Yes.
right? So what does that mean to you?
Um, when I work with my clients and I'm trying to, show them how to put a budget together, right? Now I'm not gonna lie, I'm always coming from a Christian perspective, right? So I do believe in tithing and things like that. So from that perspective, right, if we believe in tithing, which is 10% of your income, right? But also remember that God made us in his image. So that means we should take another 10% and put that away for us as well. You know what I mean? So so it's always a 10-10-80 rule, which is kind of a baseline to the beginning of building your wealth. And when you're saving first, you have to remember it's, again, I go back to the fact that you can be a high income earner, but it ain't about how much money you make, it's about how much money you keep. Because I've seen clients have what you would call low income per se, but because they manage it well, you would never know, because they look wealthy even though their income levels are low. Because it's about how you manage it, how you manage your debts, and how you manage, how you assign each dollar that comes in.
Okay, so you brought up some important things. Let's talk about one of the things. How can somebody start by managing their debt so that they can start to grow their income to develop the wealth that you were talking about?
Okay. Well, you want to put together a budget sheet, right? There are tons of resources that can help you in doing so, right? If you go online, I would mention some, but they're not paying for this. But there's a lot of resources. You can literally go online to help you manage your debt. Some banks offer it, a service that you could use. I'll mention one service that's free called Mint, mint.com, right? I recommend that because it's free. You can literally go in there and see all of your transactions, right? If you're not going to go and build a spreadsheet, because the spreadsheet obviously would be better. But if you're not going to do that, this is a great way to get started, right? And it can literally help you itemize each transaction from your bank account to see where your money's going. And it's eye-opening. It's really eye-opening. But that's, that's a good first place to start. Secondly, you could download a budget sheet online, because there's a bunch of free ones. And you can start saying, put together what your expenses are. This is how much I'm paying for my rent or mortgage. This is for my car. This is for my utilities. This is for the credit card bills. And then you want to have, some money that you could call fun money or entertainment, right? Because listen, there's no point in making money if you're not going to enjoy it, right? But at the same time, you want to manage it so that whatever money that you have, you're doing the right thing with it. Because you don't want to be a high income earner, but a poor money manager. Because at that point, you'll lead. It makes you a slave to whatever it is. It could be a slave to your job. It could be a slave to your business, because you're constantly trying to make more money. But in reality, you actually make a lot of money, but don't manage it well.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that is a key point that I want people to think about for a little bit. We're going to go to a quick break so that they can absorb what you just said. And then we're going to come right back to that.
Sure,
Okay?
looking forward.
Okay.
Hello, this is Najesti from Butterme Essentials, Natural Hair and Body Company. We are located in Brooklyn, New York. We are a family-owned company, which is run by my husband, Vaden, and I. Do you have hair that is hard to manage? Having trouble with hair growth? Is your skin always dry? No problem. Butterme Essentials is here with the solution. We specialize in hair butters, pomades, hair elixirs, shampoos, conditioners, luxury soaps, body butters, lotion bars, perfumes, scrubs, and so much more. All of our products is made with natural and organic ingredients such as shea butter, cocoa butter, mango butter, Jamaican black castor oil, avocado oil, Oregon oil, and essential oils. There is no sulfates, petroleum, mineral oils, or parabens, just all natural goodness. If you would like to order our products, check out our website at buttermeessentials.com, buttermeessentials.com, or call 646-524-3351, 646-524-3351. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Remember, like our motto says, you deserve to be buttered.
Throw and Tuck. It's handmade by myself, and you only can get it here, and it's patent, and it's only here at Rococo Design. It's like a regular pillow, or you can take the blanket out like so, fluff up the pillow, open up your blanket, wrap it around yourself, and then you can lay on your sofa and relax with your pillow throw and tuck. When you're done with it, just flip it over. When you don't want the blanket anymore, you just fold it over twice. Fold it over twice again. Fold it over. And tuck it in the back. And there you go. You're back to the pillow throw and tuck. Rococo Design.
Joe,
Yes.
welcome back.
Thank you.
So interesting. Somebody put into the chat, high income earner, first time hearing that. So again, we allowed some people to think about some of the things that you said, because it's important, right? That we understand how can we get from where we are and start to build the wealth that we're looking for.
Right.
One of the other things that I want to kind of bring out there is about life insurance, because I want to incorporate this into the health realm, as well as some of your thoughts on other investments. So how can we tie this into our health realm?
Okay. Life insurance, for a lot of people in the financial sector is considered your baseline, right? Because let's say you had died yesterday, what would happen to your family? You know, because at the end of the day, we know at some point we're all going on, right? So the best time to prepare for it is now, because as you get older, your health changes, you get older, and there's a lot of factors that take place when it comes to life insurance, right? Um, your age, your health, your gender, and the amount of life insurance you get, right? So the most important two things that you can help is obviously your health, right? And how much you want to buy. So because you can't control your age, so the longer you wait, the more you're going to pay for it. So the best time to get in life insurance is right now. Why is it so important? Because you can have the greatest plan in the world, right? But God forbid you walk out that door and an elephant falls on you, right? I always give some type of random scenario that isn't going to happen, because I know talking about life insurance can be a bit morbid, right? But an elephant falls on you and you don't make it, right? That plan is going out the window, and whatever plans you have for your family, they're going to be left without. They're going to have to handle your final expenses, and chances are you may have left them in debt. And that's what happens, particularly in minority communities, where we're not handing down family income, we're handing down debts, you know. So you always want to make sure that you have at least enough insurance, if you can afford it, of course, to cover, a mortgage, to cover uh, a business plan, because you want to leave your family with something to move forward. There's a phrase that's used particularly in a lot of the in the community. It says, "Get it out the mud," right? Which means you're building from scratch.
Okay.
But If your children have to build from scratch after you built from scratch, you failed because you didn't build anything that's going to live beyond you.
Okay, that's a key point, right? Because again, one of the things, and I'm just going to now talk from a little bit of personal experience,
Hmm.
right? My mom had felt very good that she had a will. She had this will and she was going to leave us stuff. But then
Hmm.
she took ill and ended up having Alzheimer's. And then I ended up having to pay for nursing home, time for her, right? But by the time it was all said and done, what she felt that she was able to leave, and that's what you're talking about, having buildings for stuff, there was nothing left when it was time for the will.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then there was debt, right? That I
Right.
had to then catch up on.
Right.
And thank God I did a pre-funeral arrangement plan early, right? Like 15 years before her demise,
Right.
because that if I hadn't done that, it's kind of what you're saying now. It could have potentially had left me in either further debt.
Hmm.
So that is such a key factor, especially in our communities that you're mentioning.
Oh, it's huge. It's huge because when you're trying to, again, when you're trying to build something for your family, right? You want to leave, the Bible says to leave an inheritance for your children's children, right? So the first thing and the easiest way to do that is to get some life insurance. It's quite easy, right? Once you do that, you know that at the very least, you've left an inheritance for your immediate family, your spouse, and your children. But chances are you've left something that could potentially lead them forward, right? Let's say you have a policy, $500,000, right? And you pass away. Well, now your family has a large influx of money that they can use for better schooling, to change their address to a better neighborhood, to
Mhm.
start a business, to support a charity. There's a number of things that you can do with that influx into your family to help ease the burden. Because listen, you can't bring somebody back, right? But at the very least you can do is leave a legacy for your family that says, with me, poverty stops in my family. Because a lot of family have generational poverty, because being being poor and being broke are two different things, right? Being broke is a temporary state. If I
Mm,
pay all my bills for this month, I'm broke right now until my next check. But if I'm poor, that's a mind state that
correct.
I don't even know how to get myself out of this. And I have learned behaviors that are going to push me to continue that narrative of continue to be poor.
And see, that's how it ties in to that health issue, because it then starts to psychologically play with our minds. And that's the thing that we don't want to see happen. And that is why we're here today, so that we can have people truly understand that we don't need for them to end up in that type of a situation.
Right.
Can you touch a little bit upon the types of life insurance that are out there?
Sure, sure. In its most basic form, there's three types, right? There's term insurance, there's whole life insurance, and then there's universal life. Okay. I always break it down as if I'm talking about real estate, because most people have a basic understanding of real estate. So I'll explain it this way, right? Term insurance is a lot like having an apartment. So when you sign up in a lease for an apartment, you have that apartment for generally 2 years, right? Term insurance works just like that. When you sign up for a term policy, you'll own that policy, or you're renting that policy, generally between 10 years up to 30 years, depending on your age, right?
Mm, I
At the
got you.
end of that term, you give the keys back. You don't take anything with you, you don't get anything back.
So even if you paid into that, that person no longer has anything at the
At,
end of the term.
at the end of the term, right? So I mean, it sounds bad, but it's not, because that's the worst part of term insurance, is that it doesn't last forever, right? But the other part of that is that term insurance is also the least expensive insurance that you can get, right? So you can buy if you have a large insurance need, let's say you got a new house, you have a wife, you got kids you want to send to college, that can easily add up to close to $1 million worth of a potential insurance need, just by those three factors there, not including any other debt you may have, right? So you buy a term. Specifically, when I'm recommending it to my clients, I recommend it to cover debts. So
Understood.
that's term insurance, because it's inexpensive. Now, a term insurance is what we consider a temporary policy, because you're renting it. Then, but it also has a rent to own factor with some companies. Of course, not every company does that, where you can turn into a permanent policy, which would be traditional whole life or universal life, right? And I'll explain those like this. Traditional whole life is like buying a house, right? You're going to keep that policy the rest of your life, right? But it costs the most to buy a home. So traditional whole life is the most expensive when it comes to the policies. And the reason it is because everything about that policy is guaranteed. You're guaranteed to earn cash value. You're guaranteed that the policy is going to stay with you all the way up to age 120, should you live that long. And you're guaranteed that as long as you make your regular payments, it'll never change. What's set in stone on day one, at age 20 per se, it'll be the same thing when you turn 95. It'll never change as long as you make your payments. And it has a feature where you can actually pay the policy off. You can set it up where I'm only going to pay on this policy for 10 years or 20 years or what have you. Now, that obviously doing that is the most expensive, doing it that way, but it has the longest benefit, because after that 10-year period is up, you no longer have to pay for a policy that's still going to protect you till the day you go home.
So interesting. Just to recap on what you said, it's almost like paying off your mortgage earlier than the 30-year mortgage, if we're thinking about it, like you said, in real estate.
Exactly.
And then you have your house.
Right.
But it may cost you a little bit more upfront.
Right. Now you
And
don't
then
have
you'll have
to
it
pay it
until
off.
100. Right. And then
Right.
you'll have it till 120.
Right.
Great.
Some companies 100, some companies 120. But either
Understood.
way, they all will stop payments at age 100. So should you reach 100, your payments stop and you just continue to be covered.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's generally how it works, right? If you don't set up to pay it off beforehand. And then the last factor or type of insurance is universal life. Now, universal life in itself has 3 different types. So I'm not going to go into all of them, but I'll explain it like this. Universal life is kind of like owning a condo, right? So you own what's inside of your apartment, but you don't own the building. So with a universal life, I liken it to being semi-permanent, because the policy is generally set up to last to your life expectancy, right? Which is, some companies are about 80 years old. Some companies will take you to 90 at minimum. Now you can have it last longer than that, but it's going to cost a little more money, right? It's also very flexible. Universal life gives you payment options, meaning there's a standard payment which will take your policy all the way to age 90. There is a minimum payment. Let's say you're going through a hardship. You can have a minimal payment, which will be a little less, but it'll keep your policy intact while you're going through your hardship. And then you have the ability to overfund your policy, because any cash value growth inside of a life insurance policy, you can take it out tax-free with a strategy. Right? Because again, with any type of growth, right, whether you're investing, whether you're using life insurance, whatever, you're going to pay taxes on it, right? But with life insurance, it's the only vehicle where you can take the money out as a quote unquote loan, and then you're only paying an interest rate, which is going to be significantly lower than what your tax rate is.
So that makes sense.
Right. And you can do this with whole life as well. But when you're doing it that way, it's generally used for universal life, because, there's a lot of different options on how you want the cash value to grow. I could do a whole segment just on universal life because it's complicated, but at the same time, it's a really good product to use.
So, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about the life insurance policies, and yes, it's not about death. You brought up some key points. There are ways that you could use it, allow it to grow for you, take money out of it if you need to help, if you run into debt.
Absolutely.
Right? Which can clear your mind and improve your health.
Right.
But again, it's about using it wisely. Right. And not, wasting or spending it on elaborate situations. It's to use in crises or in situations as needed.
It also can be used as just a way to grow your money on a tax-free basis.
Excellent.
Right. Most people don't know, but one of the largest companies in the world, Disney, Walt Disney, started his company from a life insurance policy.
Interesting.
Right. Most wealthy people, and I'll say wealthy. I don't like using a race per se, but most wealthy people will buy insurance policies on their children as soon as they're born or by a certain age, right? Fund that policy as their whole time instead of buying like a 529 or just setting up a mutual fund, because all of those can lose money.
Yes.
With an insurance policy, generally you can't lose money.
So may I ask a question?
Sure.
So when jobs offer policies on people, on their families, so it's your recommendation based on the statement that you just said for people to possibly or consider taking out policies early on their kids.
Absolutely.
Over a 529.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Absolutely. And I'll explain why, right? The policies that you get, well, let me just backtrack a little bit. The policy that you get from your job, let's say you work for the state or you work for as a teacher or whatever, when they offer you those policies through your job that are deducted from your paycheck, that's a form of term insurance, right? It's only good while you work there. So that's why it's ultra cheap as well. You literally pay pennies on the dollar because essentially if you don't die while you work there, it's no good. But at the same time, I encourage you get that too, because you never know, right? Because God forbid something happens, that's extra money for your family, right? And you spent $4 a check. It's worth it. But at the same time, you also want to have a separate policy that you own outside of that, because if you switch jobs, if you get a promotion, if you start your own business, you're going to need your own insurance, and that insurance is going to follow you wherever because you own it. Now, the policies that you can set up for your children, this is where it's really good to set up a policy where it can be paid off, right? Because a policy for, like my daughter's 3 years old, we just set up a policy for her, right? She's going to have at least $100,000 insurance for the rest of her life, and that policy is going to be paid off in 10 years.
So
it continues to earn cash value.
Excellent. Now let's ask about the cash value part of it for her. When she gets to a certain age, is she able to possibly want to use that just in case there's issues for college or investments or?
Absolutely. That's absolutely what she can do. Now, until she's 18, she can't control the policy. Okay. So as her parent, myself and my wife will be the ones in charge of the policy, right?
So the policy changes over at 18 and not 21?
It never changes over until you make the change.
Okay. That's
But
important.
right, but you can make the change at 18,
Understood.
right? So, so that policy she'll have for the rest of her life. That's just a baseline. When she turns 13 and this was paid off, we're gonna do a second policy. And this one will probably be a universal because it's gonna be more intensive on building cash. This is so that she has a baseline for the rest of her life. The next one will be for something else. So ideally the idea is so when she gets to college, right, she will have never put a dime into this policy. She'll have at least $100,000 of insurance for the rest of her life. She'll have some cash value that she can use to either pay for college, or when she gets out of college she can use it as a down payment on a home. She'll be able to use it as financing money to start a business. She'll be able to do a lot with this cash value that she wouldn't have the opportunity to do any other way. And don't get me wrong, 529 is great, but you have to use it for college, right? I'm not saying that not to go to college, and I definitely respect anyone that does. I have my bachelor's degree, but we're learning more and more that there are other opportunities that don't necessarily require a college degree. There's certifications. I'm in the financial sector, right? I don't have to have technically a bachelor's degree, but I got it because I wanted it. If my daughter decides to come into my industry, she doesn't have to get a degree. She just has to get certifications, and she can be a business owner as soon as at the age of 18.
Understood.
So there's a lot of different things, if you want to become, there's a lot of jobs where you may work with your hands. You could be working as a plumber, you could be working carpentry, right? These are not necessarily jobs that require a college degree, but they require certifications. And you can immediately start working and earning an income and be self-sufficient. So my mind is always about being self-sufficient and able to provide for yourself. I've never enjoyed having to have someone tell me what I'm worth, or tell me how much I should be getting paid, or tell me when and where I need to be, right? I've never enjoyed that, which is why I became an entrepreneur. Now, I had to learn all the skills I had by working the job. So it has its place. You do need to work for someone to learn the game of whatever you're going to do. And in some cases, if you're going to be a teacher, you're going to be a doctor, you absolutely need to go to school. But I just chose a different route.
And so it's important for people to see that there's ways that you can do this and choose different routes, right? Because sometimes people just think there's always just a straight road, but we do know in life there's deviation, there's curves.
Right.
Sometimes we get to that dead end, but the dead end has ways that you can back out and then branch out again, which is
Yes.
a good part of it. So let's
Yes.
talk about something else, which is the new rave, and everybody's talking about cryptocurrency, right? Everybody, wants a Bitcoin. Now you can't even purchase a Bitcoin because something that started off as $20 is now, selling at 3,000 and change, if not more.
More. Yeah. Right.
I
So
repeat.
cryptocurrency is a new form of finances, right? How can I explain it? I'm going to try to explain it as simply as possible, right? So money as we know it, the dollar bill, right? We used to run off the gold standard. Whatever money was in the currency of the country was backed by gold held by the government. It's no longer that. We've been off the gold standard for a long time, right? So now we literally run off fiat money, and fiat money is based on the power of the government. So if the government's doing well, or that country's doing well, their money is going to be worth more than the country that's not doing so well. The US dollar versus, well, I'm not going to downplay another country, but let's say like the European dollar is worth more than the US dollar, right? So that's traditional money, right? Now with Then there's traditional stocks and bonds, which are you're basically buying ownership of a company. Or with the bond, you're lending a company money and then they're going to pay you money back. That's how bonds work. With cryptocurrency, it's really based on a lot of it's based on popularity,
Hmm.
right? Because cryptocurrency is semi unregulated, meaning the money is not based on the government at all. It's based on the power of the internet and the power of popularity in a lot of ways. So, like with Bitcoin, Bitcoin was one of the most popular currencies in the crypto market space, right? And that's why they cost the most because it started out with something that was literally pennies on a dollar. Now crypto is worth, you know, 25, 30, 40,000, you know, per coin. So it's risky. It's a risky market, but at the same time, it can lead to significant financial growth, right? Um, and cryptocurrency is also about they do like blockchain. I don't know if you're familiar with that. All that is instead of everything being recorded, the transactions being recorded at a bank, it's recorded online.
Okay.
And the more people that you have within that blockchain, the more secure your network is, right? So the more secure your network is, the more people you have on that network is the more valuable your policy is. I mean, not
Got it.
policy, the
Yeah,
crypto is,
crypto.
right? And it's actually not that difficult to start your own cryptocurrency.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about investment platforms because the young people tend to go into, spaces like the Robinhood and do things by themselves
Mm-hmm.
online. I watched Robinhood bring up what was a GameStop at one point and
Mm-hmm.
take it from, I don't know, pennies on a dollar, brought it up to 300 and change, got it to where it was, and then crashed everything, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Interestingly enough, then there's places like New York Life, Ameriprise, Fisher, so many other agencies. So let's talk about, and even your agency, let's talk about how do we decide to go with a financial agency versus feeling comfortable with doing stuff on your own. I find that people of different races are willing to take more risk and challenge
Mm-hmm.
than others, even if they may not be as financially literate
Okay.
as
So
others. So
I'm gonna
let's
talk.
let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So like the different apps that you can use, like Robinhood and different things. I like those apps because they're really great starting places, right? If you've never saved before, or you don't know how to save, or you're not working with someone to show you the ropes, these apps are great because they'll give you a lot of information to get started, right? And they will invest your money, but typically, a lot of people are not going to put a lot of money into these apps. But at the same time, it makes the barrier for entry very easy because I believe Robinhood or whoever you use, they'll round off your transaction. So if you spend something that's $5.50, it'll round up to $6, and that 50 cents will go into a pot to invest. So they're great starting places, right? When you want to get into real investing, it's like you want to hire someone who's a professional. Like if you had heart issues, you don't want to go on the internet and just look about it.
Absolutely.
You want to get to a heart doctor because they know what they're talking about, right? You want to buy insurance, not something you want to just do on the internet. Talk to an advisor who can help you figure out what's the right type, how much you should have, and so on and so forth. Same thing goes with investing. If you've never done it before, the best thing you can do is talk to an advisor, because that advisor is going to help you narrow down, one, how much risk you can handle, because if you've never invested before, there is the potential to lose money. And if you can't handle losing money when you're investing, may not be the right markets for you, right? Because there are some investments where there's no risk of loss.
Right.
But generally, if there's no risk of loss, it's a long-term hold. It's always a long-term hold. So now when it comes to risk, as you said, certain ethnicities are more likely to take risks than others. It all goes back to the training at home, right? When I worked in banking, and this is something I learned working in the bank. Before I worked in the bank, I never really had conversations about how to manage money with my family, right? And that's because they weren't really taught how to manage money. So it's not that their fault. They just, if you don't know, you don't know, right? But when I was at the bank, what I noticed is that certain ethnicities would bring their children into the bank from the time they were in kindergarten, opening bank accounts for them, showing them how to manage a checkbook, showing them how to make deposits. So they were setting seeds in their family from a young age that this is how you manage money and this is how you manage risk. Because you should never be in a point where you avoid risk. You should manage risks.
Absolutely.
You should manage how much risk you can take.
So interestingly enough, I think not that my mom taught me that, but I had to figure out ways to help my daughter with math. And if I sat and said, okay, we're just going to do it with a regular book or textbook or what have you, it's
Mhm.
important to figure out ways to get it done. So one thing we used to do, and you may remember, I would come in and get coin rollers from you guys so that we
Yes.
could sit and roll coins.
Yes.
And then she would then have to do the math and add up how much she was bringing to the bank to deposit, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so that was how we started off with her learning to do her banking. So
Mhm.
it ended up, yes, and somebody just put into the chat, buy a piggy bank. And that was the first thing. Those are the same kind of gifts that I always give a newborn.
Mhm.
Again, when as a gift is a piggy bank, right? You can
Mhm.
get it customized with their names, because then you could drop coins. It's much harder to drop coins now because people are using more and more debit cards.
Right.
But that's how we did our math, our adding, and also our growth. And then as she got a little bit older, we talked about buying penny stock, not mainly like an actual penny, but something for long-term growth so that
Right.
you can watch it go up, down, taking risk.
Mhm.
And it's not something that we kind of understood, but again, it's something like you said about learning about risk and
Right.
taking risk.
That's one of the biggest things. You got to be in it to win it. You don't have to know everything about insurance to buy insurance. You don't have to know everything about investing to start investing, right?
Correct.
But generally, whatever we put our money into, we're going to take the time to learn about it. Like if
So,
you're a person that's high fashion, you're going to learn about the different fashion lines because that's what you value,
right.
right? And you're going to learn the cost of them. You're going to learn, the value. You're going to learn the quality. So when it comes to investing, you got to do the same homework. What am I investing into? Is it risky? Um, what's my potential for growth? You got
So
to
it's
be in it.
interesting. One of the persons put into the chat, this is something that should be taught in school. And they're not wrong. But we have to teach it early in school, starting at an elementary level and working our way up so that when we get to a higher level, we understand how important this is. You
Well,
know,
a part of that, the traditional school system, they traditional schools going to teach you how to follow the system, right? They're going to teach you how to go to work for somebody, pay your bills, and go home. They're not going to teach you per se how to think for yourself, because that's what a lot of this takes, is learning to think about money for yourself and not just follow the norm. Because the norm is I go to work every week or every 2 weeks, I get a paycheck. I live it up on the weekend, pay a few bills, and then I get back into the rat race.
So let me ask you a question. How do you think we can motivate people to start getting more interested in investing and also interested in starting their children in saving and investing?
Well, one of the biggest things that you can do is just show them the power of it. Um, Show them the power of compound interest, because Albert Einstein said this is one of the most powerful things he's ever seen. It's literally earning money on top of money, right? So you could take and you can show them on a graph. This is if you started out with $1,000 today and just put it in a moderate investment, what that's going to look like in 5, 10, 15 years, right? But you also got to teach them not to, uh, 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 not, you got to be able to deny yourself for a little while.
Ah,
You, you got to
that's an
be able to,
important part.
yeah, you got to be able to deny yourself for a little while to say, you know what? I don't necessarily need the brand new car right now because I'm going to have to take a loan. My credit's not right. And it's really not going to put me in a good position. I'll get a few oohs and ahs the first month that I have it. But after that, I'm stuck with this bill for the next 5 or 6 years. You
And
know?
so you made a key point, because that's one of the things that we tend to see. Like you said in the beginning, sometimes people don't have their investments or their finances in order, but they may have that lovely car, or they
Mhm,
may have the flashy jewelry, or they
mhm.
may have other issues, other
Be-
things that you see that's flashy, and
It's
they
not their
did not.
fault either.
Right. And they
It's
didn't build the wealth that we need for the growth. So if you were thinking about a few things that the audience needed to have as some takeaways, let's start first with how can we start to stimulate and get the message out to our young people, our middle schoolers,
yeah.
our high schoolers,
hmm
and then our college? I broke it up into little segments. Let's start there first.
I don't have all the answers. One thing I would say is to encourage people to actually work in the financial sector. One, particularly our community. There's very few people in my arena that look like me. Um, and a lot of times, there's a certain trust factor that's given to me when I work with people that look like me, right? They say, okay, you probably understand that what I have is not together. Because listen, we've all seen it. We've all know. We've all if we didn't grow up in the hood, we've been to it. So you can encourage, on the college level, I'll say that. On the college level, you can encourage them to work in the community, in banking, in investing, right? Because you got to be in it to win it. When it comes to the middle school and below and high school, as parents, set them up with bank accounts. Instead of giving them an allowance where you just give them a credit card and they don't see any transactions,
Right.
set them up with a bank account with a checkbook or a debit card, because really, who writes checks anymore? Set them up with online banking so they can see each transaction, show them where their money went, and show them how to save. Because
I
if you
think you
show
touched
people, go ahead, I'm
on a
sorry.
very key point, because again, it's that visual part of it, of
Yeah.
seeing what the transactions and the deposits are doing for them. They used to have those savings bank accounts with the passbooks. It is unfortunate that those savings banks have now all dwindled, and gotten rid of the passbooks, because it was easy to look in the book and physically see it.
hmm
It is a
hmm
little bit more challenging when it's online, because again, you got to log on, you got to do things. But again, the younger people are a lot more tech savvy.
Right.
But again, they also have to have access to internet and what have you. But again, I think it's so important to do what you said. When you're thinking about giving gifts for people's parties, little ones' parties, instead of buying them clothes or buying them, something they are going to grow out of or they actually don't need,
Mm-hmm.
consider giving them the cash or finding a small stock, okay, that can grow in value over
Yes,
time.
absolutely.
So when my nieces were going through their first communion, back many, many years ago, my nieces are in their 30s now or 20s, late that 20s and 30s. Microsoft wasn't that expensive. I got them both 2 shares of stock, including my daughter, and it just rode out. And look at where Microsoft is now. It had its good time and bad time, but at least they have something.
It's
And that was
significant.
the start of
Hmm.
how I got them into investing.
Oh yeah.
And it's not something I actually learned more about this when I was a resident. There was a doctor that was there that was supposed to teach us about Journal Club. But the one thing he taught us was to pay yourself first, pay off your loans if you had student loans, and try and invest in stuff.
Right.
And I became a sponge because everybody else knew the jargon and knew exactly what he was talking about. And I felt uneducated regarding the finance part of it.
Hmm.
So I listened and I listened closely. But now, like you said, there's so much that's online that you
Hmm.
can go and you can Google. I think that it is so important that we get our young people starting at the level like your daughter who's 3. You know, it was nice to bring Serena to the bank and lift her up to the platform so that
Yes.
she could do the transaction because she couldn't reach, right?
Yes.
And then I remember one bank teller giving her a little Tiffany's bag so that she could put the coins in to bring it to the bank. And I
Yes.
laugh now. Granted, the bag has ripped 60, 100 million times since then. But to this day, she still goes with a freaking Tiffany's bag to the bank with coins. And
Yeah.
she's 24. You
Right.
know,
Right. It's
because it's
important.
tradition.
It's important because what most people don't realize is that managing your finances, you directly learn that from your parents. If your parents didn't know how to manage money, chances are you won't. And then you have to go out and intentionally seek how to manage it, and it becomes a learning curve, right? Um, you mentioned before like ways to start your children. In certain communities, it's insulting for you to give them gifts on their children's birthdays, right? It's absolutely insulting to them because they look at it as you saying they don't have enough funds to buy what their child needs. So what they do is they make it known that they have some type of fund or some type of savings account for little Nayak, that's my daughter's name, or if you have a son, little Joe, or whatever the child's name is, right? Where the people who come to their little birthday parties, second, third, fourth, teen, bat mitzvahs, all of that good stuff, right? They have checks written to the child, so the
Right.
parents can deposit it and have a significant savings for them as they grow. Because ideally, you as the parent, you want the child to have money that's going to grow. So if you could take all of their birthday money every year, all their Christmas money every year, all of the holiday money every year, and you save that till that child is 18, well, that child's going to have a nice nest egg to go to college with. And if you don't need it for college because let's say they got scholarships, they're either an athlete or they're academically sound, you can now roll that money to be even more. And the longer you wait to use it, the more money they have. So it just continues to grow.
Interesting. There's a question in the chat. It says, "What is the best way to gift stock?"
That you're gonna have to work with the parents, of course. The best way is you're gonna have to give the money to the parents, or or if you don't trust the parents, let's because that happens. You can buy the stock yourself and then list the child as a beneficiary,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Because if something happens to you, then you list it. But don't do that and don't let someone know, because if you pass away and they don't know about these accounts, then they'll never be able to benefit from it.
And I think one of the things, as you're 100%, you need to let the person know. And then when they turn 18, you're able to then turn that stock over into
Yes,
their name at that
yes,
time.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. So you want to make sure, like you mentioned, having a will earlier in the conversation,
Yes.
highly important, highly important, because a will deter a lot of arguments and fights. I have seen families break up at the bank because Big Mama passed away and she had an estate with a lot of money, and the children are fighting over how it should be divvied out. Somebody says, "Well, I deserve this," another person says, "No, you don't deserve that because you messed up XYZ," and it becomes a huge fight. But if you have a will with instructions, there's nothing to fight over. This is what I want to happen when I'm not here.
There is another question in the chat. It says, what advice do you have for people self-employed and over 50 regarding stock?
Get started. You're never too late to get started. Um, Now, again, when you're looking at stocks, and if you've never invested before, stocks are pretty risky. They're very risky. It could be worth $100 today, and next week it could be worth $20, right? So if you're not used to investing, I always recommend get started with the mutual fund. Get started with the mutual fund, because a mutual fund is managed by the mutual fund company, and you have people actually making transactions that are designed for it to grow. Because if they're not growing, people aren't going to invest in it. So you actually have a team of people working to grow this money to help you grow. It's definitely the best way to get started, to kind of understand. It kind of limits your risk, and it's a great way to grow. In fact, most investments are generally in some type of mutual fund. If you have a 401k, a 403b at work, those are mutual funds.
Right.
You're just not in control over it. So
Got
when you want to take control over it, which is what I do, is I help you take control over it, and I help you decide how excuse me, how you're going to invest it. And it's highly important. You never want to leave money with a previous employer.
Understood. There is another question in the chat. It says, old savings bonds, similar idea? Because you got to remember, back in my era,
Yeah,
that's what used to be, and not
that
that
was it.
I'm that old, but that's what used to be given to every baby that was born,
Right,
savings bonds, and you
right.
have them, and then you would bring them into the bank after a certain amount of time and try and cash them out. So let's talk a little bit about people who have still savings bonds.
Savings bonds aren't really, like, I don't the last when I was in banking at Chase. Now, this was back in like 2013 or around that time. They stopped selling them because it's kind of an obsolete type of investment. Like, granted, you can go, I believe you can still go online
And
and
get
get
them.
it, but who wants to wait, 30 years to get that investment? You know, let's be honest. You want to save for that time frame, but in 30 years, there's a lot of things that could happen, right? So I would recommend, again, look at a mutual fund, even look at a life insurance policy, because with a life insurance policy, you get the dual factor of protection for your family and cash value growth. That's always what I recommend people to get started, because it's literally the only thing that can give you both. And it can hedge against the risk of losing money as well. Inside of a life insurance policy, even if you take some of the cash value out, the cash value per se will still grow as if you didn't take it out. And that's the only product in the world that can do so.
Okay, I'm going to try and wrap this up, but
Sure.
importantly, as the market is dropping now, the financial market is down. Would you suggest for people to consider getting, attached to a financial planner, whether it be you, any agency, or what have you, and consider starting to get, stock for their kids, for themselves? Like one of the questions was about regarding stock over the age of 50. With the
Mhm.
market being lower and dropping, do you agree that this is a good avenue to try to work your way into the market?
The way the market is funny, right? The best way to benefit from the market is to be in it, right? Um, in a time like this where everything's going down, it's actually the best time to buy, because when the market is going down, what's essentially happening is a sale on the stocks. It's a sale on mutual funds. So what would cost, let's say, $100 today, will now only cost $80. So you're buying it for less than what it was, right? So it's a great time to get into the market to buy right now, because you're buying things at a discount. And then when the market comes back, you're going to have that much more value when it does grow.
So,
Again, the market does go up and down, but buy now, especially when the market's going down, because you're buying it on a discount.
one of the other questions or statements that's in the chat is trust funds for children and grandchildren.
Okay. So a trust in itself is not necessarily a fund. A trust is literally a business, right? But it's in the eyes of the IRS, right? A trust is just a separate entity that allows you to place funds or assets inside of it and be taxed separately from your own personal expenses, right?
Mhm.
I highly, if you, especially if you have significant assets, highly recommend getting a trust. You're definitely going to need a lawyer to do so, to at least set it up properly, right? Or at the very least, a paralegal, which we have those on my team, to help you get started. Um, but it's a great avenue to get started, because you can put a home that you own inside of a trust. You could put any type of property. You could put any type of anything that's an asset. You can put inside of a trust. So it's a great idea. But a trust isn't just for your children or grandchildren. It's actually for your whole family.
Right. All right. I want to see if there's any more questions in the chat.
Hmm. I know we covered a lot of things, family.
We did.
We covered a lot of different topics. Each topic in its own could be a completely separate show, right? But I just want to, at the end of the day, right? The main thing that I would tell you, even if you don't decide to work with me, hire a professional, right? Because your finances is one of the most important things when it comes to managing your home, right? Because in any relationship, in any home, there's a lot of different things. There's your relationship with God and your family. There's your interpersonal relationship with you and your spouse. There's your health, which is important, and then your wealth, because most marriages break up over finances. Most relationships end over finances. If you don't know how to handle it, hire a professional to help you.
Joe, you've touched on a lot of important things tonight, like you said, but sometimes people get afraid to spend the money to hire a professional because they feel they're so much in debt or in the hole.
Hmm.
But I have to agree with you. That is the one thing you should invest in doing, even if it creates a little bit temporarily more debt, because it will get you out of the debt that you're in and then get the growth for the wealth to help improve your health. And that's what this whole show was about.
Right,
How do we tie in the wealth with our health?
right. If you get sick, you should go to a doctor. If you need help with your money, you should seek out an advisor. It's literally you gotta value advice. You have to value advice because nobody knows everything,
Correct.
right? If I needed to talk to if I needed information where I needed to talk to a doctor, I'm calling Dr. Jones. In fact, when me and my wife first got pregnant, well, when she became pregnant with my child, let me say that, I called Dr. Jones, like, listen, I want to work with you, you know, and then she plugged me into the resources that we needed, and we had a healthy baby. But I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't call her to get the information that I needed. She pointed me in the right direction, and that's what financial advisors do. They're going to point you in the right direction, and most of the time, just to have a conversation isn't going to cost you, at least the first time around, because they don't know what they're looking at. To talk to me just to have a conversation, I'm not charging you just to have a conversation. In general, I'm not charging you for the services. The companies will pay me. So it's not even something you're paying out of pocket.
Absolutely.
We're just going to work together to put something in order to get started on your finances. Because it's not something you do one time and let it go.
And I think that's the
once
key
a
part.
year.
That's the key part. Making sure that you also go back in and look at your finances and meet with your advisors and stuff like that over
Right.
that period of time. Because again, there are things that can get missed. Everybody's a little busy, right? And you don't want to end up upset that, somebody wasn't following stuff. So you have to take ownership, right? That is taking ownership of your health. The same way you need to take ownership of your finances.
Absolutely.
So with that, Joe, it has been a pleasure having you on the show.
Yes.
People love the information. They were like, excellent information. Thank you. Great talk. But again, piggy banks are great. Investing early is great. Saving coins, rolling coins are great. Having life insurance. We touched upon a lot of things here tonight.
Yes.
And I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart to come on to the talk show to encourage and empower our people. So
absolutely. Thank you for having me. This was really powerful. Thank you for allowing me to come on your platform. To let people know it doesn't matter your age. You could be 85 years old. As long as you're still breathing, you can get help. There's certain things you can do to better yourself. You could be 15 years old. Wherever you're at, you can get help to get things going. And make sure you check in with your advisor once a year. The same way you check in with your doctor to check on your health every year. Check in at least once a year on your finances, because it's a lifetime journey and things change.
Absolutely.
So good. Thank you. Please.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. We might need to have a segment 2. We'll see how it goes.
Listen, we'll make it work.
Thank you.
Absolutely make it work. I definitely will make myself available for you.
And I appreciate that. Thank you again. And everybody have a good night. And please do remember, All About Us is about changing you, changing us, and changing the world. See you again next month, the third Thursday of the month, 7 p.m. Bye.
You're listening to All About Us Radio. We're live streaming 24/7, playing old school versus new school. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at AAU Media, and visit our website, www.aaumedia.com. Call us at 1-833-369-1444, extension 1, and leave us an inspirational message or request. You're listening to All About Us Radio.